update, and so I ask Jenny Larking and Simon Oddie to come forward.
Tēnā koe e hea mana. I just wanted, just before the staff come in, just wanted to announce the new monarch for you. So, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. About just after 10 o'clock, the new monarch was announced, and that is Kingi Heitia's youngest daughter, Ngāwai Hono I te pō Paki. So just on behalf of all of us, ngā mihi ki a koe te kuini Māori, Ngāwai Hono I te pō Paki, te waru, which is number 8. Ngā mihi ki a koe. Kia ora, just wanted to announce that. Ngā mihi ki a koe na.
Thanks, Alf. Good morning.
Is that us? Cool. Well, kia ora koutou councillors. Thank you for your time and providing the space for us to provide an update to you on our programs of work, in particular around Te Waihoratu and the Karangahape stations. As you are all well aware, we're now maximising the benefits of our investment in CRL as a key priority of the council group, and sort of outside of the work that has been delivered by CRLL and their various contractors. This takes the form of the creation of public transport hubs around Te Waihoratu Station and Karangahape stations, public realm and streetscape upgrades and improvements, as well as critical infrastructure and services upgrades. This is all required to ensure that our city is able to make the most of the benefits at CRL and the transformation that it brings, and to make most of that, what that can offer for our city. This is complex work. It requires a significant amount of cross-agency collaboration and coordination, and it's not an easy job, especially when we are doing this in the middle of Aotearoa's most important business, residential and cultural hub. So I do want to take the opportunity while we're here as well, just to thank Jenny and her team for the mahi that they're doing and leading this work on behalf of the council group and coordinate across many different agencies, and the work that they are also doing to help manage the impacts and work with our community around the disruption that is caused. It is an unenviable job, so just want to thank that. There is a lot going on, as you will all appreciate, in the city centre, and while the benefits of this investment will be big, we are highly cognizant of the impact that the work here and now is having on our businesses, on our residents, our communities and our visitors. We understand the challenges that presents, the stress that it causes, and where we have the tools available, we do feel that we're doing what we can to mitigate these impacts, but appreciate this may not always seem sufficient. But we are committed to working with our community in that space to alleviate impacts where we can. Before I hand over to Jenny to take us through the current status of our works, our programs, and what you can expect over the next 18 months, I do want to highlight that an update was provided around the Midtown Works to the City Centre Advisory Panel at the end of August. Feedback from the panel was that they very much understand and they support the work. In fact, they're excited about the fact that we are on the home stretch. They can see the light at the end of the tunnel, pun intended, and they are excited about the end result. But in line with what we are hearing from many other areas and many other stakeholders and constituents, they did also stress and highlight that people are hurting, that the businesses that they represent, their stakeholders, they are hurting. They understand the context that we're working within, they understand the economic environment with which the city, Aotearoa, is facing at the moment and how that impacts, but they really did stress that point as well. So without any more from me, I'll hand over to Jenny, because I think what you want to hear about is where we are and what you can expect over the next 18 months.
Thanks, Simon. Kia ora, councillors. As Simon has said, we're working very closely as a council family to deliver the city centre, not only just within the council group, but we're also working very closely with utilities providers and the private sector to develop the city centre. Our program is very much well underway, so currently our big focus is to finish the works around the City Rail Link stations so that the areas around those stations can be free from significant construction and be welcoming and attractive when CRL opens. We're making really good progress, and I'll be talking through what you can expect over the next 18 months. So this is the picture in Midtown. So the pink shapes that you can see there are representing public sector development, and the blue shapes are representing private sector development. So our work is currently very much focused around Albert Street, Wellesley Street, and Victoria Street. And starting in October this year, Watercare will also begin to upgrade their wastewater infrastructure in Midtown. So they will have 3 work sites on Mayoral Drive, Wellesley Street, and Victoria Street that will support them to tunnel under Queen Street. But very shortly after Watercare's work start, Victoria Street west of Queen Street will be completed and open to the public. And over the course of next year, construction, you'll see, will gradually clear on Albert Street and Victoria Street. So the work on Wellesley Street and the wastewater infrastructure work is anticipated to finish by the end of 2025. And the last phase of the Victoria Street upgrade between Queen Street and High Street will begin in early 2026 alongside the next phase of the Watercare works on Mayoral Drive. The streets are very much changing day by day. This is a picture of Albert Street, and you can now walk on the footpath pretty much unobstructed all the way from Midtown through to the waterfront. And we have started planting trees on Victoria Street, and so today and tomorrow trees will be crane lifted into these waiting tree pits that were designed with mana whenua. This picture is showing a mock-up of one of the Watercare work sites. So we're working very closely with Watercare to make sure that the work sites are safe, attractive, and are as small as possible. So while there is still a lot happening, we are definitely coming out of the worst of it. Over the next 18 months or so, you will start to see construction fences coming down, spaces opening up, providing relief to the city and allowing the city to return to normal. By the end of this year, Victoria Street to the west of Queen Street will be open. By the end of next year, Victoria Street East between High Street and Kitchener Street will be open, as well as the northern half of Wellesley Street. By mid next year, Albert Street will be clear. And also in the Karangahape Road area, construction is currently happening on Pitt Street and Mercury Lane, and there are some minor works happening on Canada Street, East Street, and Beresford Square. So over the next 6 to 8 months, construction will be focusing on underground utilities and enabling works, and from late 2025, construction will shift to above ground paving and finishing works, and the project is expected to be completed in late 2025. And as Simons has alluded to, while there is, we acknowledge and have a lot to look forward to in the city, we acknowledge that this level of construction is really challenging for the neighbouring businesses and residents in the area. So this is on top of a very tough economic environment. We know that some small businesses in the Midtown area in particular are doing it really tough. We continue to offer targeted support to those businesses impacted by construction, supporting them to operate effectively and working hard to make sure that the area is continue to be safe, attractive and welcoming for Aucklanders. Alongside our ongoing communications to the impacted community, we'll be delivering a big publicity push over the coming months to celebrate key milestones to help Aucklanders understand what's happening and to show them that construction in the city centre will be easing. We're continuing to deliver activation and events to give Aucklanders more reasons to visit more often, including the Te Wiki Te Aotearoa Māori that's happening at the moment, We have Diwali Art Week and Christmas in the city centre coming up later on this year. And in the new year, we also have to look forward to the SailGP Lunar New Year, Pride Festival, and much more. Thank you for listening, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Jenny. First question from the Mayor.
Right, there's quite a lot of stuff and it goes on for quite a long time. And just when we're getting to the end of it, Watercare into the fray and stop more stuff. And I know that I see there you've got a thing, growing understanding and building anticipation of media and publicity to celebrate milestones and blah, blah, blah. We've got a huge comms department in here, ridiculously big, but not particularly ridiculously brilliant. And I'm just hoping to see, can we be addressed by somebody from that to discuss how that's going to roll out over this particularly long period? Because we don't have a great track record on this side of things. Recently, the government shut off Northland for 12 weeks by closing the Brindewans, and the comms plan was so clear and good that nobody really got angry. So can we have an address by someone, and perhaps could they perhaps look around to find somebody or other who's done one, just overseen it, that's all. I'm not the data, but someone with experience in handling really nasty public interferences like that in a manner that didn't upset people would be really great. Because if we don't have an overview of this, it'll just be added to that long list of things that AT have specialised in, and we will, the good things we're doing will disappear, because there is a lot of good stuff in here. I'm not suggesting there isn't. But we seem to have perfected the art of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory in terms of how we go about telling our stories. So I would like it at the next meeting or one of the ones in future to ensure that somebody who's got an overview of this, not necessarily having to work in here, but somebody who can just have an overview of this to make sure that all those people in there assemble a story which is built in a manner to highlight the positive things and to show that we are going to benefit from this. Because I think there is a good story here. But I just have great worries about how it might accidentally disappear. If that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, Barry's written about 12 lines of work there of things to do. Beaming in from Patagonia, Chris Darby. You there, Chris?
Yeah, sorry, just found the buttons. And thank you. Just a question, and thank you, Simon and Jenny. Your slides note 3 or 4, maybe a couple more of major development sites on Queen Street, Albert Street. There's been some major investments there that I think most of us are aware of, and projects will be getting away on those. One that's not denoted is the blight on the Wellesley to Wakefield block, which is the St James Theatre relic. Now, council has quite a significant loan facility in place on that, and it's a long anticipated, restoration or rebuild. Do you have any oversight? You've obviously got awareness of these other private development projects. This is one that we actually have some skin in the game on if it proceeds. And we were awaiting confirmation that government was going to confirm its funding to allow us to confirm ours. But we're also waiting for the private developer to confirm his funding or their funding. And their funding would go first as opposed to ours. Do we have a status report on that?
Thanks, Chris. So we engage regularly with the St James developer. So effectively, the developer is waiting for confirmation of funding to proceed with construction. So they are very hopeful that they are able to start construction in early New Year.
Okay, can we get, this has been sort of languishing for a while, can we get something a bit more concrete? Chair, I'm not sure whether we've seen any information about that for, or maybe over a year. I don't think there's, can we get a memo confirming the status of that? And because that block is, you know, as I mentioned earlier, is an absolute blight. The second point, Simon, you and I have discussed, you know, the observation of maintenance issues, pavement stones lifting, you know, in the Queen Street Valley. Are we on top of noting the maintenance requirements in Queen Street and surrounding streets, where utility companies have come along, lifted things, not put them back, etc., and just making sure that the existing environment is a good environment to move around on, particularly on foot?
Yes, I think in that form, that falls very much into our priority around enhancing the experience of people when they're in the city centre. We know that sort of things like cleanliness, maintenance, operational outcomes such as those can have a big impact on the way that people perceive the city centre, particularly if it looks like we aren't caring for and looking after this place. So that has been a big focus over the last few months, and I'm pleased to actually be able to put out the exact data in front of me, but there's been a few instances where, for instance, street furniture, areas that have been dug up for services that haven't been put back properly, we have been working hard to track that all down, chase it all the way back to the original source and get those issues rectified. And we are just in the process of putting in place a bit of a tiger team across the council group, noting that it's a coordinated response that is required to enhance some further outcomes in that space as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Wayne?
Sure. Just got a question further to the Mayor's comment about comms and effectively, I guess, a comms campaign. How about the overall marketing campaign for the area? And you know, I understand that that would include heart of the city. So, is there a well thought out marketing campaign that embraces a whole range of things, including, you know, the council facilities like the Aotea Centre, the art gallery, the library, town hall? I mean, all the assets that we've got that are in the mix, and obviously that campaign also needs to take into account the opening of the CRL, which is communications, yes, but marketing much more over and above that.
Thank you for the question. So through the City Centre Target Rate and supported by the advisory panel, we have actually allocated $2.5 million per annum over the next 3 years to specifically to promote visitation and to the city centre. So part of those activities, the work is being done very collaboratively between Auckland Council, Tātaki Auckland Unlimited, and the Two Business Association, as well as the private sector. So it's some of the works that's come out of it is Tātaki Auckland is preparing an investment prospectus for Auckland, the city centre, just to promote the benefit of investing in the city centre. They're actively promoting and trying to bring major events into the city centre, so that people, you know, to bring in those visitors and tourism into the city centre. So one of the, the sort of achievements recently is the Lord of the Rings musical theatre that will be in Auckland. So there is very much a collaborative and cohesive program that looks at promotion and attraction alongside our publicity and communications program.
Given that there's a high degree of interest in what you were just talking about, and obviously a huge interest on the part of retailers, investors, and the general public, are we going to be very transparent about this, so it's out there, it's on a website, and is available for people to comment. For example, some of the top marketing and communications companies in New Zealand are in that catchment. They may want to make some suggestions and the like. They may have clients that have got skin in the game that are interested in boosting their retail activity. So how open and accessible and engaging is the process?
I mean, I think we can take on board your feedback there, and the ideas of being able to work with the private sector and other entities within the city centre to help boost that attractions. That's a big part of what the city centre advisory panel has asked us to do as well. They've been very clear that given the current economic environment, the next really 6 months is quite critical for the city centre. They've asked us to look at how we can sort of front load some of the attraction and marketing activities in that space, working with both of the business associations as well as the private sector, and leveraging things that are already in play or enhancing things that are already in play as well. It is a bit of a mix of the sort of attraction, fly and drive, bringing people into the city centre from either outside of the region, but as well within Auckland, as well as enhancing the perceptions when people are here. So there is a multi-pronged approach to that, and that is what we're working on with the business associations, and Tātaki are taking a very strong leadership approach in that. We can definitely bring some advice, because we're going to have to take the same advice to the advisory panel as well on what we're doing in that space.
So in terms of transparency, I mean, is all of this information available on a website and the like, so people can visit it and they can see what's happening and they can make suggestions? So it's kind of dynamic?
In terms of activities and events and things like that, that's all very transparent. In terms of our marketing activities, we can look at how we're sort of showing what we're doing in that space. I can get some advice from the teams on the best way to do that. I think your point is around how we can bring others into the mix and into the conversation, if I understand. So there'll be a few avenues through which we can do that. So we'll get some advice from our colleagues who are leading that space, and we can revert.
Thanks, Brian. Chris.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. And there's so much work to be done. And as we often reflect, this is sort of the shop front of the Auckland region, so it's important we get it right. In the past and in going forward, are there any difficulties? You would have heard the earlier item where it's a bit frustrating, where you've got multi-agencies involved in terms of accountabilities. So with the work you're doing, some work goes to the planning committee, some work comes to the transport committee. What's your understanding in terms of accountability for the sign-off for any of the transport-related issues involved in taking this project forward?
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll try and answer that question. So the Midtown program is very much, I guess, a group of program delivered by different agency, and it remains so. So my role as the program director for Midtown is to bring together the coordination of the various projects happening in this space, making sure that we are not tripping over ourselves, but also making sure that we don't dig up the road twice and interrupt the community more than we have to, as well as bringing up that joined up story and customer experience for the community. And in that respect, it has worked very well. So the team has been extremely, all of the different agency working together has been extremely collaborative, and in times, they are being asked to make compromises on their own respective projects for the good of the city centre, and they have done so.
Thanks. Mike, online.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for not being there. I've come down with a rather heavy head cold, so I thought it best I stay away. But I wished to make a comment, and I could also respond to the query raised by Councillor Darby, whether this is the appropriate time, or there's a comment section after, I'll leave it up to you.
Sorry, Mike, I was reading a comment from Chris online. Can you just repeat what you want, if it's a question of me?
I'll repeat, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'll repeat. My apologies for not being present. I've come down with a rather heavy head cold, so I thought it would be best I stay away. However, I wish to make a comment about what's going on in the city centre and the damage that is being done. But I also noted the comment from Councillor Darby, so I could briefly respond to that, but whether this is the appropriate time or if there's a comment section after question time, then I'll do that then, up to you.
Yep. So we'll come back to that. We'll do that once the staff step back.
Thank you.
No problems. Richard?
Kia ora, and thank you both and the teams working with you. It's complex, but really, been down there with some of your teams, and it's pretty phenomenal, the work that's going on. The question one I had, if you could just give a slight broader overview of the water care work, so just so for people to understand, my understanding it's like replacing 80 to 100-year-old pipes while also providing for growth, right? Like it's not we don't want to end up like other cities with poo in the streets.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Sorry, Councillor Hills. So the water care works is very much about delivering new infrastructure for the city centre to enable capacity for growth. So it's and also they will be doing critical asset maintenance for the Yaraki main sewer that will basically prevent risk of damage similar to other areas in the country. So it's So the work will be that they'll do. Sorry, the work that they'll be doing will be creating capacity for new growth, new businesses and homes to be developed in the city centre in the future. It will reduce the risk of wastewater overflow into the harbour and contaminating our water. Yep, and as well as safeguarding future infrastructure.
And they're up next. So, and Dave's indicated he's good to talk about it if you want.
Thank you. And the Karangahapu streetscape upgrade, it does sound like, and I have had some complaints from businesses, that some of the furniture and things are being either vandalised or being removed, maybe even by us, I'm not sure. Are we able to ensure that what was put in either stays there, or if there are issues, it is moved somewhere else? Because I know that some of the businesses have been upset that some of the furniture and things have been removed. Do you know anything about that?
Apologies, I'm not in that detail, but I can come back to you.
And the other question around, and I don't know if the decision's been made, but the outside the Mercury Plaza and the station there's been sort of a to and fro between, is it a public space or is it going to be a shared space with vehicles running through it? But my understanding is that the submissions were overwhelmingly in favour of a pedestrianised space, and even when you got down to the businesses and residents in that space, it was still significantly in favour of that. Has that definitely been made, the decision to allow cars kind of through in front of the station there, or will it be a pedestrian plaza?
Through the chair, if I may invite Eric Van Essen from Auckland Transport up to answer the question.
Councillor Hills? Yes, so a decision was made very recently, relatively sort of pragmatic one, that section of Mercury Lane will be constructed the way it was intended, whether it's shared space or pedestrian wall, doesn't really matter. It is what it is. It's a flush surface, stone paving, trees, etc. It doesn't really make much difference, but the decision has been to resolve it as a shared space for the time being, northbound traffic, which is the reverse of what it was previously. So outbound only, and then a left turn only onto K Road. And then once the station opens, in around about 2026, we'll monitor and assess the impacts on the environment, because it's got a lot to do with the interface with the station entrance there and the number of people and the movements and the safety, etc. At which point we will review and reassess whether or not we then take the next step to resolve it fully as a pedestrian mall.
Thank you. And last question, Chair. Just on the private development, so we've got about, I guess, 5 billion of private development, but we're starting to get a few 100 million announced every few months or weeks in the Midtown area, probably because of the works that are being complete. How will you engage with the public interface? So the Stonewood, the Chow Brothers works, and then now the precinct. I think they saw some amazing renders of that, 600 to 900 homes above the old McDonald's building, which is fantastic. But that's going to have significant disruption as well. How are we working with them on both the High Street, Lawn Street connections and the Queen Street? Because the public will just think it's us again. But how do we do that?
Thanks, Councillor. So we are engaging with those developers on a regular basis. So in terms of disruption management, we're very much engaged with them to ensure that the information, the work that they're doing is reflected in our communication so that we get a cohesive story of what's happening. We're working closely with Auckland Transport, who are looking at traffic disruption at a precinct level, not just individual project level, and they'll be managing those, traffic impacts as part of the whole Midtown network and not sort of responding just on one project at a time. We're also engaging with them in terms of the development's impact and also opportunities at the street level, so we can sort of consider, the street level sort of changes that might be appropriate to support an enhanced experience for pedestrians and the users.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Ken?
Thank you. Where was I? Just going back to our one dig policy that I've heard of, we were going to bring electricity down Queen Street to supply power to the ferry terminal for the electrified ferries, and I understood that didn't happen. And then I understood that Fullers were waiting for the line to come down Queen Street. It isn't happening now with this water dig. Have we worked out how we're getting enough power to the ferry terminals to charge the ferries without digging anything up again?
I can answer that at a high level. The plans that I've seen, there's a substation in Lower Hobson Street or thereabouts, maybe it's Hobson proper. They're going to come from that location and head east, broadly along Custom Street, and then come down, I'm not too sure which side street, whether it's Commerce or kind of Britomart Place, but then make their way to Key Street. And the idea there, of course, is not to cut through any of the finished work that we did in Key Street some 2 or 3 years ago. We don't want to rip up that paving, so we're kind of moving a little bit further to the east to avoid that. But those works by Vector are for the express purpose of future-proofing that part of the city centre, because there's development proposed there, and also, of course, providing for that significant requirement associated with charging ferries.
Thank you. My point is that it doesn't sound very connected in some ways. We've lost opportunity and we're digging again, but just in a different area. I understand it's not inside the main part of Auckland, so that's one good thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Any other questions? Just one from me. And so, is there any consideration considering the scale of the work that is occurring across so many different areas within the city centre? Brisbane too has been going through a similar disruption with their metro system and their cross river sort of rail. They have operated a drop-in information centre basically in the centre of their CBD that gets tens of thousands of visitors every year, people not only visiting but people who live, school groups. Is there any thought given to actually replicating something like that here so that we take our community better along the ride than we are currently doing? Because quite obviously it would appear that the The communications, as I think the mayor's spoken about and others have spoken about, the communication that we're undertaking is not hitting the mark. And so is there any way that we could potentially consider that so that we actually tell the people and give them the opportunity to have a look, experience it, and it could include what private people are doing as well, so that people don't make up what is happening, they actually have the opportunity to see it.
Yeah, Jenny may have a bit more detail on this as well. I do know in the past we've had various information centres. I think Link Alliance had, or even may still have one on Victoria Street to provide information such as that. I think we can take the suggestion away in particular and look at what benefit that might have over the next 18 months, particularly as we're coming to the key milestone around CRL opening and streetscapes finishing on the surface level and disruption starting to pull back to help people understand that side of things. So we can definitely look at that as an option to enhance the way that we're communicating over the next 18 months as part of that wider package. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'll just ask you to step back. Thanks, team. Good to see you all. Okay, Mike, you've got a comment, so you can lead off, mate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I just want to make a comment in regard to the city centre. I note this committee now has been augmented with the name Resilience, and I guess resilience is what I want to talk about here, especially the commercial resilience of what was considered the central business district, and certainly what once was the premier shopping street in New Zealand. The city centre, because of this program, which we are told Eki Panuku is leading, but I have a great deal of doubt about who actually is leading. I would suggest it is indeed Auckland Transport. But leaving that aside, the ongoing blockade of the city centre, blockading against mainly the private vehicles, is set to ramp up with the banning of private vehicles on one of our major cross-city arterials, Wellesley Street. Fortunately for the motorists who work for Auckland Transport in 135 Albert, it won't affect their car parks and their ability to access it. But for people from that point, Federal Street on down to Queen Street, they will be effectively blockaded. We've heard from the representative of retail and business in the city centre, Viv Beck, and she reported that their surveys indicate a 33,000 drop per day per morning peak of person trips. And that is not just cars, it includes PT, indeed walking and cycling. So much so as the information that came out with the near-death experience of Smith & Coe's foot traffic is down 55,000 persons per day in Queen Street. This is a really serious situation. If we're interested in resilience, rather than compounding the situation, which is not entirely the fault of the Auckland Council Group, but the Auckland Council Group and what it has been doing is actually compounding it. And so I want to make a firm protest against this, and also against the scheme to close off Mercury Lane to traffic against the will, I would say, of most of the people who live in that area. So I want to make that point. Someone has to say it. The Emperor has no clothes. This has been going on for over 6 years. it's tied in with the CRL, which will be recorded as the most expensive and longest duration 3.4 kilometre rail tunnel in the world. But leaving that aside, what the assumption is, it seems that in blockading the city centre from blockading private vehicles from the city centre will be more than taken up with public transport. Well, that is not happening right now. In fact, the trend is, in terms of PT, is lagging well behind into general traffic flows. So we've lost ground there. To assume that we need to build footpaths to choke off vehicle lanes to enable Melbourne Grand Cup final crowds to be pouring forth from these stations every day is not particularly well founded. So I want to make that point. The other point, which is off the topic really, but has been raised by Councillor Darby in regard to St James. Councillor Darby has made inquiries about this in the past. I understand he's been briefed by the heritage team. He's also made inquiries of council staff supporting me, and has been asked to talk to me about it. He hasn't done so far. The working party, which the mayor asked me to lead a year or so ago, when he replaced me on the board of AT with another councillor, has completed its work. It's had a number of briefings from the developer, from staff, and also some formal meetings. So I'm not too sure how formal the working party is. They are on record. The decisions are on record. And if Councillor Darby would like to look them up, he will or ask for them, he'll be given them. Currently, the whole deal has been signed off after the working party has been over the deal and scrutinised it, has made recommendations to the council chief executive, which the council chief executive has scrutinised with his own staff and has actually signed off, excuse me, some weeks ago. It is now, I understand, on the desk of the mayor, who is, I understand, intends to take it back to the full council. So that's all I can say about St James. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and another rookie error. So we just need someone to move that we receive this report. Thank you, Julie. Seconded, Chris. Right, now we can move on. Wayne.
So I asked some questions around a marketing campaign, and that involves both communications, promotion, activities, a whole lot of things. I think it's essential that be as public as possible, so you can go to a website and see it. And as much as possible, it could and should be collaborative. We've got some of the best marketing gurus in New Zealand that are in the CBD area. There are people that can contribute with ideas and so on, and we should be opening this thing up so that we get some suggestions on how we can breathe more life into Queen Street. Because if we don't, and we don't soon, it's on a trajectory down, irrespective of the CRL. So that's my plea, Mr. Chair. I would hope that we will see that. It's essential that it be as transparent as possible and as easy to engage as possible for businesses, companies, individuals that have got an interest in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Julie?
Kia ora. I would point my colleagues to Ike Panuku's website, where under neighbourhoods it has city centre, where it has quite a lot of detail about the stuff going on in the city centre. I take on board the point about having perhaps a map that reflects the private developments that are happening as well and shows the sort of the the interdependencies. I think that would be useful, but the city centre action plan is there. There is information about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the ongoing specific projects, all sorts of stuff. So, and you can look at that by map even. So commend that to my colleagues. I would just note that I think all of our city centres and, town centres are struggling at the moment. I spend quite a lot of time in Mount Eden Village. It's on the bus route for me. It's got great cafes and a couple of bookshops. So that's where I often go. And even that, which is a very well supported village, has a really strong bid, now usually has at least 1 or 2 vacant shops. The town centre that I tried to put some effort into rejuvenating some years ago, the Mount Roskill Town Centre, which has been waiting on confirmation about what's happening with Dominion Road for a long time, that continues to struggle. So I think the idea that that vacant shops is necessarily an indicator of struggle and trouble, yes, it is, but it isn't exclusive to Queen Street by any means. Most of the bottom of the new mall in Newmarket is empty. Nuffield Street, a lot of the people who were over in Nuffield Street in Newmarket moved to the new mall, and now Nuffield Street itself is empty. So this is not something that's unique to Queen Street at all. Some of it predates COVID, but some of it is related to that, the changing patterns of people coming into the city. This is something we've started having some conversations with Heart of the City about. I know that Mondays and Fridays tend to be quite light in terms of foot traffic in the city now, and that's a result of more people working from home and perhaps using local town centres instead. And I think that is something that we need to grapple with and actually work through what that means economically for our city. At the moment, we've kind of been waiting for things to go back to pre-COVID. Some of this stuff is more permanent change, and we need to think that through. The point about the St James, so that's actually where I get on and off the bus when I catch 25. And it's been gloomy like that for years, and it really is not the fault of the city centre work that Ike Panuku's leading. And I'm glad to hear that there is a working party, but I would note that I was unaware of that's not a working party that I understood has been set up through our democratic structures or reports through to them. So I would really appreciate some more information on that and its work, particularly someone who stands outside the vacant big hole in the gap in the teeth, if you like. And also I was at something at the St James not long before it closed, and it was a very glorious venue, and I would love to see it reopened and in use again. The other point I'd like to make is that I think it's really important that while we acknowledge that this has been challenging, that we continue to have construction here, these are actually the growing pains of a city that's getting better and better. I have friends who lived overseas when we were in our 20s and our 30s, and some of them moved home at the start of COVID, worried they might not be able to come back otherwise. And many have commented to me on how much nicer the city centre is now as a place to walk around, to be and to take their children to, than we remember from when we were kids and teens. I used to come in, I think, once a year for the Farmers Centre Parade. But now I bring my children in several times a month because there's heaps of beautiful places for them to play, to explore. They actually quite like seeing the construction, but my kids are probably a bit weird like that. And so we are actually making something better here. And so I really am encouraged by the report we've had today, encouraged by what I see on the website, and look forward to seeing more. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. And just before we go to Chris, just people are asking about St James. It is going to be on the agenda of the October governing body meeting, and so we will have an opportunity to dig deep into the St James. So, Chris.
Oh, look, probably thanks for that information then, Chair Andy. That's good. Look, I have been asking questions since late last year, February again, May again. I haven't been invited to talk to you, Councillor Lee. I didn't know who on the official side was actually leading the so-called political working group. I understand it's one politician and two outside of council. I'm a bit confused about the structure there. But look, the point I just make here is there's certain things we can control, there's certain things we can't control in the city centre, and there's other things that we have influence over. And the St James is one that we have influence over because we've extended a loan facility which hasn't been taken up yet, because we're awaiting confirmation of the developer's hard cash and confirmation of the government's funding line. And I understand that there is a new QS that's been undertaken, and back in early May, a document was inked. But we're now 3.5 months later and we don't have visibility. And it is a considerable loan facility. It is a blight, as you know, Councillor Ferry was saying. You know, it's a very unsavoury environment on that Wellesley to Wakefield block. And I am concerned that the developer does not have the capital to follow through on that project. I am concerned that the government will not come to the party with the original funding package. And so that brings into question our commitment. And let's see that at the governing body. And I appreciate it coming up. I have been asking for this to be given some daylight for some time. And let's discuss it then. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. And just briefly, to echo some of what Councillor Ferry was saying, that there is a lot of change in the city centre because it has had to happen. Wellington, unfairly or fairly, has become a bit of a meme about their pipes in the city centre breaking and spewing sewage or whatever all over the streets. This water care work that we're hearing about soon is crucial for the current buildings, but some of those pipes have not been maintained or moved for 80 to 100 years. And we did see during the floods that actually the water came smashing through there as well. So it will be disruptive, but it does have to be done not only for the growth, but for the maintenance. So it is up to us to try and help those businesses and residents and visitors to look after the space. The other issue is that where we've invested, and this council over the last decade has invested in the Wynyard Quarter, the Commercial Bay Area, Britomart. There are 25,000 people working in Wynyard Quarter now, and 10 years ago there were 0 people, well, not 0, but there were no offices and there were no major office workers that were usually working in the Queen Street Valley working down there. As we've moved up through the city, the investment has come. I've got a list of over 40 either underway or proposed significant developments that are happening in the city centre corridor, and we're hearing them announced all the time that will continue to come, but they will be disruptive. But people are investing because they want to be here. There is 300,000 square metres of commercial space coming online in the next 5 years in the city centre. People do not invest hundreds of millions of dollars if they think our city is dying or bad or useless, etc. We've also seen pedestrian counts in the city centre, the Queen Street Valley, increased by 9% this year. Yes, we're still below where we were for COVID, but it's an increase on last year. We've also had a 5% drop in retail vacancies in the Queen Street Valley. That is improving too. We're going to see massive trees dropped into Te Hanoa tomorrow, and this council unanimously voted for Te Hanoa to happen many years ago, and it was a very popular project, and you cannot have those lanes open because you'll drive straight into the new Te Waihorotu station box, which has just had the label, the signage put up a couple of days ago. So, you know, if we kept those lanes there, that's fine, but they drive straight into a station box, which is pretty, you know, not good for anyone. So it's there is a lot of upgrades happening, and it is very disruptive, and it's very tough for those businesses. And I go as much as I can down to the cafes and spaces down in those areas to eat and buy coffee, and we should all be doing that. But to the Mayor's point about communications, we've got a fantastic communication team which do great work. The issue is that some of us and some of people want to talk out there completely contradict what our comms team are trying to do. So tomorrow we'll put out some positive stories about those trees going in and the urban ngāhere that's being created, and that was well supported by city centre residents, businesses, and the people who pay for the city centre targeted rate. And I hope that we all share it positively to help spread that message, while also understanding that it is very disruptive. So there is a lot of good going on, but there are issues much like the St James. We've got right here in front of our town hall the Sky World building, which I don't know if anyone will pay the $50 million to buy that, but that has been empty since COVID, and that is not something that we can necessarily address ourselves. So there are massive issues, but we know that as things roll out, as this investment rolls out, and the private investment comes in that's even greater than what we're putting in, the city centre will continue to improve, and we have to continue to support it. Kia ora.
Welcome to the parallel universe.
Thank you, Mark. I never interrupt you. You always interrupt me. Thank you.
That's okay. We'll move on. So any other comments? None. It's been moved and seconded. We'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against. Carry.